Welcome to the Content Podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. This episode of the Content Magazine podcast is brought to you by Bonfire, a Silicon Valley digital agency building elevated websites for ambitious brands. Find out more about Bonfire at bonfire.com.
Hi, this is Danny Sanchez.
Today we talk with Danny Sanchez. He's the executive director of the City Peace Project and the author of Post-Traumatic Quest. Hey Danny, how you doing? This is Daniel. It's good to talk to you.
Hey, how you doing, Daniel? Good to talk to you.
I'm doing great, man. Yeah. I just wanted to touch base with you. We've kind of had some contact in the past just a little bit, and I've seen you around. But then I saw that you had written kind of your book and your memoirs, Post-Traumatic Quest. And so I wanted to just kind of talk to you about the book, writing the book, and also there's a couple songs that you released about the same time with the book too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's start with those actually first. The music that you've released, are those recent recordings? Did you just do those?
Well, what happened was we recorded some of them in, I think, like 25 years ago, and they were on something called ADAT, right? And so we had to find somewhere. We found somewhere local, Red Eye Studio, that was able to transfer them onto digital. And the reason that we wanted to release that is, of course, with the book, but also, at that place in my life, I was not the same person. You can tell by the lyrics. I was, depressed. I was going through a rough time, and I wanted to show. I work with, a lot of youth in our community, and I wanted to show them that you can get past that stage in your life.
Yeah. So then when did you write those songs and kind of pin those songs, and what year-ish would that
I
be?
think about 1995.
Okay.
Yeah. And so one of them is current. One of them I did, it was a partial song that I wrote back in 1996 or 97. It's called Why Am I Alone? I actually, I finished it, and there's no vocals from the past. They're all from now.
Okay. And then as far as the production of it, you sang and then you wrote them. Do you play instruments on it as well, or?
No, I have a longtime friend of mine, Jeff Gomez. He plays guitar, and we reconnected. We've kept in touch over the years, and so because we had to do some updates on music. So yeah, he played guitar on it, and we have other members of the band that played from back then. Yeah.
Okay, but that's cool. I didn't know. I thought that maybe there were some new songs. I think it's because it is Why Am I Alone? That's the one has There's a Garden in My Head. Is that
Yeah. And you'll see towards the end it changes. I'm not alone, because I went through that that stage in my life where I felt like that, but I know that I'm I have support now, and I wanted to give that message to whoever listens to the song also. Especially during COVID, right? We can feel isolated. So when I record the song, I wanted to end it on a positive note, that I'm not alone.
Yeah. So also, I just read the book. I mean, it came out just in May, and I just tore through the whole thing, and I was shocked, quite honestly. One, congratulations on writing the book, and I just applaud also your vulnerability of writing about all the things that happened to you in the past and all the things that you were about. You were in juvie, prison, physical, mental, sexual abuse, just like the whole thing slammed at you, really, right?
Yeah.
And really, yeah. But then you have a transformation from that, and you say in the book that that's when, in prison, you chose to become a Christian. So what does that mean, and how does that come about? I mean, I guess that's a spiritual awakening that you had.
Yeah, but in the book, it's kind of for me, it wasn't my spiritual awakening at that point. It was just like a door was opening for me, because, it was the worst experience I had when I was, incarcerated, right? I was kind of, for lack of a better word, shot to the curb by the people that I hung out with, because I was following Christ.
Oh,
So, later on, I do have a radical transformation, through my faith in Christ. But at that point, it was kind of an escape. I was trying to find an easy way out of what was going on in my life in the book. And
okay.
yeah, so, that's when I kind of, at that point, I was younger and I was like, oh, this is not for me at that point, and I think again, I was using it as an easy way out of my situation,
Yeah.
and I'd been stabbed multiple times, and I just wanted some to find some sort of peace at that time.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
it was a difficult time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, okay, so then, yeah, because later, because you kind of have that in the book, and then you get out, but then you immediately kind of return to your normal
Yeah,
kind of shenanigans, if
yeah,
we could call them
yeah, yeah,
that. And then, but then, yeah, your cousin or uncle Eddie had become a pastor, and so he kind of brought you in, right?
yeah. He was, like, I don't know if anybody that's listening has one of those, family members that's really just fired up for God, and he was one of those guys. He had been incarcerated in and out, right, and he's sleeved with tattoos, and he had an experience with Jesus Christ, and he wanted to share it, but at that moment I wasn't ready for it, and I
Yeah.
was like, he would pray, and I would put the phone to the side and be like, man, you almost done, dude, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
and at that point, it just wasn't my time yet. I wasn't ready to fully kind of surrender the lifestyles in. And what I didn't recognize at the time was it's because I had these layers of trauma that I was dealing with,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to let go. I was a heavy drinker and drug abuser, and I didn't want to let that stuff go at the time because that helped me cope with pain.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's like some pain I didn't even realize. I normalized a lot of it, and I think a lot of people, I work with the community, with youth, and I'm on the mayor's gang prevention task force as a crisis responder, a faith leader,
Hmm.
a pastor that supports families that are dealing with loss through youth violence, and also bedside assistance for those that are injured in
Yeah.
violence. And so, I've been in the place where a lot of these young people that I'm working with have been, and you know, I don't think at that moment I was ready to give up my coping mechanism, because it took
Yeah.
years after to realize, like, wow, I don't have control, and that
Yeah.
came back when probably before this, but like when my mom, she kicked my dad out of the house, and I was devastated when I was about 4 years old. I can remember her throwing
Yeah.
something out of the house, and I was angry at her, but I didn't know that he had been with someone else,
Yeah.
and so a 4-year-old just sees dad gone, and at that moment we didn't have a lot of we were moving around a bit to my grandparents, and we moved another place, so no stability, and I felt
Yeah.
really out of control at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about too, like a kind of a pivotal point in your life. So you had those kind of, kind of like a little bit of abusive home, and then the divorce, and picked on by your brothers, and kind of that kind of scenario. But this one time you had a fight, and then that felt like it was something that you could do. So you kind of wrapped up your identity in that, right?
Yeah, because I wasn't very good at school. I had a lot of um, it was difficult to comprehend a lot of what I was learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was a brat. I'm going to be honest with you, but like, and so I didn't getting the pat on the back for getting A's, and stuff like that. I was, if you're familiar with 680 near King Road, there's a catwalk
Yeah.
there, and that's I was at Lee Matson Middle School, and I got into my first real fight with a bully, and I ended up, just putting hands on him, and
Yeah.
and I mean, it's not funny, but it just,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, and
Yeah.
I people were cheering, and I felt like, whoa, I'm doing something right now, and
Yeah.
so that led me on a path. I had no positive role models.
Yeah.
Nobody was, I wasn't playing little league, and my parents weren't in the aisles cheering and taking me out for pizza with my team and our snazzy
Yeah.
suits, So it was, that was something that that really helped me. I mean, not
Yeah.
helped me, but made me feel like I did something right.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like, yeah, like I said, like you wrapped up your identity in being this
Yeah.
fighter. And that led you down a path of a lot of, a lot of stuff that led then to this spiritual awakening where you became a Christian, right? Um, the person that you were and the person that you are now, who's the Danny that's consistent in there? What do you see kind of like, oh, yeah, this is who I've always been or want to be?
So my faith in Christ came at the lowest point of my life. If you in the book I talk about flirting with death and
Mm-hmm.
thoughts of suicide and suicide attempts, and I always was curious about it. You know, maybe it was
Mm.
because I didn't feel like I had anything. Like I didn't have any hope. I
Yeah.
didn't have any support. I felt alone. And when I had my radical transformation in Christ, I faced death. I I had to do a bottle, for my probation officer,
Mm.
and I can get put back, being locked up
Yeah.
if the bottle's dirty, whether it's alcohol or drugs. And I happened to not care the night before and did some drugs.
Oh,
And there was a there was this amongst inmates, if you want to have a clean bottle, you drink baking soda. So I drank
oh,
a
yeah.
bunch of baking soda, and it got me super sick, and I threw up some blood, and
Yeah.
I was like terrified. I was like, I'm gonna die. And at the moment when I felt like I faced death. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to die. I want to live. And
Mm.
I heard from many people throughout my life about Jesus Christ, and
Mm.
my uncle being one of them, and other people, other locals, like I don't know if you remember Simon Woodstock, the skater. He was
Yeah.
at the church I was at, and they were sharing with me, and I said, "If you're real, God, I want you." And at that moment, my life radically changed. Like it, I mean, I was free from drugs.
Yeah.
People can share all the stories they want or talk about the other one, but I'm telling you, this is a real experience
Yeah.
I had. I felt like I don't feel addicted anymore. I feel peace,
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot of the things that I was dealing with were starting to, I was starting to realize like, okay, I feel like there's a healing beginning in my life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was a powerful experience for me, and uh, I left, my former path.
Yeah.
I was tempted sometimes, but I moved forward from there.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so then you started to work in a church and work at the youth, and that eventually led you to what you're doing now, which is the City Peace Project. So, what exactly, do you do with the City Peace Project? What's that about?
So the City Peace Project, we work with public schools, and we do mentoring and coaching, supporting students, conflict resolution on campus. Especially now during COVID, they have distance learning,
Mm-hmm.
and I really feel like a lot of the students are dealing with a lot of trauma and uncertainty, also, right?
Yeah.
So we reach out to them, whether it's Zoom, over the phone, over social media. We support them. We do home visits,
Yeah.
and we just try to encourage and help them, through school. If it weren't COVID, some things we do is we take them on tech tours to local tech companies like Apple or Google or VMware, and have engineers and other people share with them their experience,
Yeah.
because you know people might not know this. We from San Jose know this, probably. Well, a lot of us do that are from here. That there's a big gap between the haves and the have-nots here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's people that are making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. There's some people that multiple people are in one are living in a tiny room.
Yeah.
I mean, tiny home.
Yeah.
And so, I just try to give them hope, and connect them with the resources they need to be successful.
Yeah. 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 I love what you say in the book too. Is that rather you chose rather than trying to take them to prison and try to scare them, you were going to give them kind of like the opportunity to see how great life could be, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they already know what happens when you make bad choices, right? But we have to give them the experience of, what is it if they make good choices, right? We want
Yeah.
them to know that effort and education and hard work, it'll pay off. I know it's not easy all the time for everyone, but if you continue to work hard, like myself, I felt
Yeah.
like for me, I had and I share this in the book, I was in juvenile hall, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was being accused of a felony that I did not commit. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I'm an angel. I was with the people that did it, but I was in
Yeah.
juvenile hall, and I remember when I was getting convicted of the felony, I was like, my life's over. Who's gonna want to hire? And I was like 14 years old. Whose
Yeah.
life's over at 14 years old? But I didn't have anybody telling me anything otherwise.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so look at the obstacles some of our kids have, especially in underserved communities, right? And
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
students are disengaged. They don't have some of the opportunities that more affluent areas might have, and so we are trying to connect them with that. Some of the kids we work with, they're not documented, right?
Yeah.
Or their
Yeah.
parents are not. They live in this fear,
Yeah.
or they have, no one, everyone learns differently, right? Some by instruction, but some people need some hands-on kind of support. So we also provide tutors
Yeah.
because we understand that too. And then
Yeah.
also, I took a group of um, students that were associated with a local gang
Mm-hmm.
to Google. And
Yeah. Cool.
when the engineer was talking about engineering, they were falling asleep. But when he let them code and create something, they lit up.
uh,
There
yeah.
was
Yeah.
laughter. They were just like, come and look at this. They were so happy at something, they created
Yeah.
digitally. And it took them like 20 minutes.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
So it's just those types of things say, wait, I can do this. There was a student on
Yeah.
the trip that said, you know what, I could see myself working here at this company. And it doesn't have to be an engineer. They could be an artist there. They can work in the kitchen, wherever it might be. And it's not
Yeah.
just tech companies. They have opportunities to do whatever they want, and we want to provide a pathway for them to get connected. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of the coaching. I wish I had somebody that coached me and helped me along my path when I was
Yeah.
younger.
It's it is strange. I think and you do a great job in the book pointing it out. I mean, it's and even as you're talking now, it's like the things that are kind of holding us back that we use to cope. Um, they're only there because it's the only option that we know, and that we're in as uncomfortable and damaging it could be to us. It's the thing that we're comfortable with. It takes that kind of like, no, there's another path
Mhm.
out there. Yeah. So now, I mean, your life is definitely being used. Your experience. I mean, imagine that the empathy and understanding that you have for the community that you work with is a great asset and a tool, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, but as you're working with the community, I mean, you talk about in the book too, how once you became a Christian, you and a pastor, and you're doing stuff, you were still trying to kind of like prove and do, kind of like making up for the sins of the past in a way or something. So you've,
Yeah.
dealt with that. Um, but for me, I, is it must be very overwhelming to be working. I mean, how many students do you get to work with, and how many are kind of still caught up in the path and the trajectory of not seeing choice and option?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah. So we have a team. So we work with hundreds of students, in East San
Mm-hmm.
Jose. I'm the executive director of the City Peace Project, but I
Mm.
also am working on the ground because I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I've seen a shift. We were at one school particular, right? When we started, the school was a middle school. They had 100. I don't have the exact number, but 140 plus suspensions one year.
Wow.
The next year, and I'm not taking the credit for this because there's a lot of amazing people on that campus,
Sure.
staff. But we had it went down to 20.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there's some data there showing, these, we're not teachers. We're there as a coach. The teachers, us as a coach to them and a mentor, and then just working through with them, we're
Mm.
starting to see transformation.
Yeah.
And in the when I'll, I'll be honest with you, like when I do, because what we provide for the chaplaincy program for the gang task force for the crisis response, that's a difficult part of my work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We help families that are dealing with loss.
Yeah.
No one knows, no one, I mean, no one's ready to lose a 14-year-old son to
Yeah.
youth violence. And it's
Yeah.
difficult, but it's also, I've dealt with that violence, not of loss particularly. I mean, but I was in a hospital bed. Like I visit people in the hospital.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so it's part of it helps me because I've experienced it, and it's a part of me healing as giving back to help these students that are dealing with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
because I sometimes, because I'm an ordained pastor, right?
Mm.
We provide financial support to the families. We provide food for the families. We help arrange the funerals for the families. We even sometimes try to get facilities for the families because it's expensive, right? Um,
Yeah.
and we get a pastor or a priest or whatever their faith background is to share there for them, and a lot of times they invite me to do it. And this is a way that before we really launched into our work, when I first started working more with the community,
Mm-hmm.
um, that a lot of people knew me. They would say,
Yeah.
"Hey, you did Sleepy's funeral, or you did Dopey's funeral, or you're the
Yeah.
priest that did this or that." And that's what built. That's where you. At one funeral, a young man. I think he was 18 years old. It was really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But we're in a small chapel. I think it's called Chapel of Flowers down on Second Street. And if anybody's ever been there, if you could imagine one of those chapel rooms filled with about 200 plus people, it's packed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I was in that room, um, we give an opportunity for people to share about, um, like the person, share some memories.
Yeah.
And the memories that were shared, usually it's about 10, 15 minutes, right? Or less. It was over 2 hours.
Wow.
Teachers, principals,
Wow.
coaches, friends, and it was so devastating. And as
Yeah.
I was listening and as I looked out into the crowd, some were weeping, some were angry.
Mm.
Could smell the alcohol.
Yeah.
Some were, I don't know, probably plotting for retaliation. It was gang related. Some,
Yeah.
were just sitting there blank. And at that moment, as a believer in Christ, I felt something in my heart say, "Look, these are like sheep without a shepherd.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to love these people." And
Yeah.
that's where it birthed out into more being more proactive,
Yeah.
proactively being a part of my community. I started seeing, I would go to McDonald's right there on Tully Road, right, and past some kids. They said, "Hey, you're the priest." They would call me
Yeah.
a priest, right? And so, I just would just start talking with them and encouraging them, and that's what birthed that proactive work, and then working with schools, and then going to skate parks because not only did I have a background, being involved with a gang, but I love skateboarding. I still skateboard today, and
Yeah.
I go to skate parks, and we give things out to the kids. We do like giveaways and prizes, and I bring food. They're they're looking
Yeah.
for a place to have acceptance and connection, and we try to get that connection with them.
Yeah. I mean, would you say like even with the school that you saw the the transformation from 100 and something to 20 something, what was it, detentions or
Yeah,
um
assistance.
and even what you're doing in the community and stuff like that. I mean, would it be like, is it really somewhat simple in that it's just love and time and encouragement that is the big factor to change people?
I think so. You can't put a metric on it, right? You can't put. There's
Yeah.
no data. It's just love, right? I mean, we could see the results, of course, the data. You know, um, but it's just time. We spend a lot of time, and I say we because I have a team. A
Yeah.
lot of time in the community, a lot of time listening, a lot of time guiding,
Yeah.
and I think it's just really really important for the youth we work with to know that they have someone that they can call. I get calls sometimes in the middle of the night, not all the time,
Yeah.
and I have questions, and even some of the kids I work with that have left the gangs, they're concerned about their friends, and they'll tell me,
Yeah.
or just it's it's just amazing the relationship we build. These are like the ones that would call me at night. They're adults now, but I've known them since they were in seventh grade.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they're productive. Doing productive things in the community when they before they were making bad decisions, and some of them went down the path that I went down. Being
Yeah.
incarcerated and such.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you start going, it's really hard to turn back. The odds really are against you in some ways, right? I mean,
Uh, I'm glad you bring
yeah.
it up because when I was younger, I know there's a lot of reform and change now. When I was younger, there was about I don't know the exact number, it was 60 kids per unit in juvenile hall. And I heard the
Yeah.
entire juvenile hall right now has something around, I'm not sure, maybe 60 for the entire facilities. But
Huh.
I was an alcoholic teenager that was
Mm-hmm.
drinking and doing drugs, and I really needed rehabilitation, but
Yeah.
I got incarceration.
Right.
And instead of getting help, I kept going back for drinking and just being incarcerated instead of being sent to a rehab.
Yeah.
And I think about it, it was, and then even to young adulthood, the same thing happened. I felt like there's a term that when you're incarcerated, it's called being railroaded.
Mm.
It's for conviction. The DA would say, "Hey, you got this misdemeanor. If you plead guilty today, you can get out. If you don't plead guilty, then you're gonna have to wait for
Right.
your next court date." An uneducated person like me, what do you think I did? I wanted to get out, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to get out immediately, and so I would just get like, these for drunk in public, or whatever it was,
Yeah.
getting in trouble, and it was a long path until finally, when I shared earlier about that near death experience, finally one of the probation officers said, "Man, you need help. I'm going to send you to rehab."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so it's just having empathy and looking, and this is what's important. This is why we wrote part of why we wrote the book, right? Because there's layers that
Yeah.
people are dealing with. When I was in juvenile hall, for the first time, it was my first time being in juvenile hall. They didn't know I was claustrophobic. My brother,
Oh.
he locked me in the closet. They threw me
Yeah.
into a tiny room, with a
Yeah.
key lock with a tiny window. I flipped
Yeah.
out. I
Yeah.
started banging the door and I was hyperventilating, asking to let me out.
Yeah.
I was there for 30 days. It seemed like I was there for an eternity.
Right.
And I was completely changed after I got out of being incarcerated.
Yeah.
I
Just because of the trauma of being locked up like that, huh?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and the loss of control that I felt when I was a kid, when I felt like when my brother would,
Yeah.
put a blanket over my head or lock me in the closet, or when somebody would bully me, all these things started coming up. But then the reason I say I changed is because, I tried to act normal because I would have to survive. It's the total opposite. Um, of being outside when you're incarcerated. You can't trust people. There's a lot of violence. And back then we would fight all the time. And so when I got out, I tried to act normal, but I'll tell you right now, I did not feel normal.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was a different person. And
Yeah.
the skill, what I learned from being incarcerated, those those skills don't work out here, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the world, my parents' life went on, the world went on, but I was a whole different person after getting out of
Yeah.
incarcerated.
Yeah. It's not only that experience of being in that kind of changes you, but then when you get out too, um, it's the way that you're labeled, and then you've lost resources, right, and even support systems. I know sometimes like if you don't even you get your license taken away, so then you're riding your bike to get to place, but then you're getting home late,
Yeah.
but then you got a record, so you get stopped because you know,
Yeah.
and it just becomes this real difficult thing. What would you say then? Definitely with what's going on in the world in your experience. I mean, you've kind of been on both sides. I know you in the book you even talk about a time where you were hogtied and taken up, kind of like up by the mountains over or the hills, at Elm Rock or Story Road out that way,
Yeah.
and yeah, kind of like beat up, abused by uh, the police. Now you work along police officers or engage with them. Looking at from your all your experience and like that, what is our culture and society supposed to do? Defund the police. What's kind of your perspective? What's do you see as some of the solutions and hopes for our society?
Yeah. When you think about this, right? So my experience was it was during the Rodney King riots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
take me up to the hills. They hog tie me. Um, there was guns drawn on me,
Yeah.
and I was about I think 18 or 19 years old, and I weighed about 105 pounds. So think about that. I was very young. I don't remember around that age, right?
Yeah.
But they one thing they said to me that I'll never forget is like nobody would even care if you died today.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put a blanket over everybody. Everyone's different. There's people that are wearing the badge that are committed to what they do, and there are people that abuse their power, and there are people that are in the middle, seeing the same thing every day. That it gets hard.
Yeah.
But I do believe there needs to be reform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just when I'll give you I'll share a story. I'll share a couple of stories, but
Okay.
a mother called me, and her son, he had the term, what is it? It was a mental health call, emergency call,
Okay.
right, for
Sure.
a teenager, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before she called, she was afraid to call 911, and she was asking my advice. Like I said, you have to make the decision. It's his life in danger. I had to go over all that stuff with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she made the decision to call the hospital,
Mm.
right? Because she was afraid. A young Latino man,
Yeah.
acting, you know, different. She was afraid that something would happen to him. The hospital asked her to call 911. I was on the phone with her, and they came right before. I think about the same time as the ambulance came, and he took off running,
Oh.
and they chased him.
Yeah.
And this kid needed help. Need he didn't need to be chased by police officers or handcuffed. He was having
Right.
something going on that he needed support with. And
Yeah.
so, there things like that. It needs to be reformed. I actually talked with um, a higher ranking officer here in San Jose about that situation, and he mentioned to me also, like, I don't, he mentioned why they do that. If there's any
Mm.
sort of, like, if there's any sort of threat, even
Right.
banging on the door or pushing the door, then they have to send police. But he also told me that that's why sometimes these mental health calls turn into a felony.
Oh, because they fled, so that
Yeah, because something
the
happens.
resisting
They
arrest
resist,
or
or they push, or things like that happen, or even they can be looked at as a threat. And
yeah.
you know, so and the and another time there was some, this is after everything had happened, the protests downtown, and there was
Mm-hmm.
a couple of young men that I work with. They were sitting in a car, and they got harassed, and they weren't doing anything but sitting in a car
Yeah.
in an area that's probably known for gang historically. And I
Mm-hmm.
called, a higher ranking officer and asked him why, what's going on with this. One of them ended up getting taken in. He did have, like, maybe I think it was a screwdriver in his pocket,
Mm.
but he felt it was very aggressive, and so we're getting calls. So my advice is, like, what I told the young man's these moms, I said, you need to call the independent police auditor. We need to hold
Yeah.
these people, these officers accountable. They videoed the incident, and and I don't know what mom did, but I can give advice to that. So yes,
Good.
I do know some people that I've worked with because I have to go go to a home after a homicide, or somebody was injured. So I did meet people that are officers that love what they do, and
Yeah.
they're passionate. They want to help people and get people that these people that committed a crime, a violent crime off the street.
Yeah.
So I just think that there needs to be a lot more support for the when someone's not a threat, and not looking at
Yeah.
everyone as a threat. Maybe it's the way they're trained. I don't know enough about that
Yeah.
to speak on that, but I don't think everyone they come across
Yeah.
it's a threat. Especially it's sad if it's a young African American or Latino man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every call is as unique as the person and the circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is a lot of pressure on the police officers, to how they can manage that and handle it. And um, yeah, but unfortunately, I have to say too that I've seen police officers that I know who've been great, great people, but the daily exposure to kind of some tough situations and then having near death experiences because of threats
Yeah,
makes them hard, and fearful,
yeah.
So yeah,
I
yeah,
an
yeah,
ER nurse had said this before, and I always pray for myself that this wouldn't happen. But when they see someone coming in constantly, they get a little bit
yeah,
like, this person keeps coming in, like it just gets a little bit hard towards. And I hope
hmm,
that our officers' hearts are not like that. I hope that my
yeah,
heart never gets like that when I'm working with kids that are getting suspended or getting in trouble. I always want to have empathy and compassion for them. And I
yeah,
think, I think it's important for us and for them to be trained on that. Also, it's important, right? And I don't think,
yeah,
necessarily needs to be militant. I think it needs to be there needs to be a balance, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how about for me as a citizen? I live downtown, and um, but for other people, what can we do? How can we live? How can we help create a better neighborhood?
I think it's, you know, knowing your neighbors, right? Um,
Hmm.
knowing your community, find out what's going on in your community. That's how I got involved in what I do. I just started meeting people. I just started. I didn't even know there was a gang prevention task force.
Hmm.
I didn't know that there's the programs like Project Hope and Catholic Charities and other programs that are out there for youth, or um, knowing what the needs of our neighbors are and our community is.
Hmm.
These skate parks are important. Think about that.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we used to skate up the whole streets in San Jose, right? But
Right. Yeah.
they have a place to congregate and to skate, and it's not always just skaters. There are people hang out there, and of course, there's people doing what they shouldn't be doing at the parks too. But I go out to our parks in San Jose and I build relationships with people,
Yeah.
and they respect me. And if I ask them, you know, something, most of the time they'll be like, "Hey, I respect that." If there's
Yeah.
maybe there's kids there, and I'll say, "Hey, like maybe we shouldn't be smoking that stuff around the kids." They're respectful of that, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
But it's because of the relationship, right? I mean, they know that you're there to support them, not to bring them down. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not there to judge them or anything. They know that off the bat. I'm there to support them and then to teach them also, to look out for the people, their surroundings. Because say for
Yeah.
instance, like if you go to Plata Arroyo Park, the skate park, and in the afternoon, there's so many little kids out there skating on their scooters and just having a great time.
Yeah.
And you might not think sometimes there might be somebody out there maybe smoking what they shouldn't be smoking out there. And we want to make every area that's open like that a family friendly area, and
Yeah.
people are really respectful. You just gotta You I built relationships over the years and talked with them, and they're
Yeah.
really cool. They're really good people.
Yeah. So let's get back to the book a little bit. If there's one thing you want people to take away from the message of the book, what would that be?
Well, for the kids, I would say this, that there's hope beyond your
Mm.
current circumstance, especially um, I can't even say post COVID. We're still in our COVID, and there's trauma, right, from COVID.
Yeah.
There's isolation. There's been an uptake in domestic violence at homes. There's been um, there's been also like a lot more violence happening in San Jose. You know, if you're
Yeah.
watching the news, there's drugs, suicide, and
Yeah.
I think people are there's a sense of hopelessness, and like I had, but to
Mm.
know that there is a way beyond this. That, like myself, I turned my pain to purpose,
Yeah.
and then I found peace, and my peace, comes from my relationship with God and self care. And
Yeah.
for those that don't know what the kids are going through, or what young people, or why are they acting this way, or what what's going on with these students, whatever it is, whether they're an educator or work with youth in some way, they're not showing up or they're not participating in their work. We don't know what's going on in their home. We
Yeah.
don't know, mom and dad are not working because of COVID. They lost their work or hours, or even lost a loved one. We don't,
Yeah.
and they're not logging in. We don't know if there's 10 people in a small house and it's loud and they don't want to turn their camera on. So give
Yeah.
us the layer, like let them know that there are layers that a lot of the kids they're dealing with, they just need empathy and love and support.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. What about for you? What is your kind of spiritual practices and self care that you kind of do to keep you filled up to do the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's tough sometimes, especially with
Yeah.
loss. And there's kids that I've known that have passed,
Hmm.
and in the book I do mention I did have a hard time. I went through kind of a breakdown, and I needed support.
Yeah.
So for me it's prayer. I pray,
Hmm.
get up in the morning, pray, meditate on the Bible. Um,
Hmm.
I know the importance of having good people around you, with my church family,
Hmm.
and with them. Um, I skateboard.
Cool.
Opposite of pain, it's fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's pain here, and then I mean, of course, when I fall, when I skate, there's a little bit of pain, but it's not the same. But
Yeah.
I use all of our skate parks in San Jose, and I love it. I have a 10-year-old son that skates with me. I ride the bowls. I have a lot of fun. I'm not doing all these crazy tricks, but I have fun out there. And so
Yeah.
I take walks with my family, and even had counseling. So
Yeah.
I have to,
Yeah.
in the Bible, the disciples that were with Jesus, they were doing a lot, and Jesus would take them away to a quiet place. And
Yeah.
so if I know that the disciples, needed to get away, and Jesus even retreated to a quiet place, that I do to recharge. I need time, and I need to have self care. And I think,
Yeah.
especially here in the Silicon Valley, we're so used to working and grinding, grinding, grinding. And I think it's so important that people take a break and say, you know what? For me, the highest form of worship is rest.
Hmm.
When I'm worshiping God, if I'm
Yeah.
resting in Him, that's the highest
Awesome.
form that I could feel, like just the presence and grace of God in my life, when I'm at rest. And I think a lot of times, I even in my work in the community, I had the Silicon Valley grind. I was
Right.
going, 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 going,
Yeah.
and it burned me out.
Yeah.
And I needed to get refreshed and restored. And I think we need to all have balance in our life. I think it's
Yeah.
important. You know, there's a gentleman. At the time I met him, he was a COO, of VMware, and we took a group of kids there, and he shared something with the kids, uh, that we took from one of our high schools in East San Jose. We took them over there, and he came and talked to them. He said, "There's four things, um, always work hard, never stop learning, love what you do, and always give back."
Yeah.
His name is Sanji Punan, and the giving back part is what brings it full circle. Like if there's
Yeah.
anyone that's listening that's in the grind right now, when you give back to the community, like those tours were powerful for these kids.
Yeah.
When you're doing something, it's a part. Like for me, it's like it's a part of my healing. You know,
Yeah.
from I'm able to help people that are in my situation, and even it keeps you like when we give back, not like feeling overwhelmed or pressure, but like just saying, like I'm gonna volunteer to distribute food or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just so important for us to learn how to give back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. I've kind of found that too. I had a little epiphany, because it's like, well, what does it mean to love your neighbor? And it was like, well, it just means simply to serve and to help. And then so I came up with my own little motto of life is like to live is to give, right?
Yeah,
And you really, yeah, you get not only personally enriched, but everything just really comes alive when you just think of your life as giving and serving.
yeah. A pastor shared with me years ago when I was a new believer. Like I had a lot of anxiety and stress.
Mm.
And I said, "What do I read? What do I do? Like, I mean, what do I read, or what should I pray?" Or I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, "You don't do any of that. You just go serve someone else and get your mind off yourself."
Yeah. Yeah.
We're so focused
Yeah.
on ourselves a lot, right? And he's 100% right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just help people that needed help and support
Yeah.
people, and that birth and grew into where I am now.
Yeah.
I really just want to. I just want to be. I tell those that I work with, hey, I'm just a messenger here. Whatever I get, I I'm getting from somewhere. Whether because a lot of our donations come from churches. A lot of our donations
Yeah.
from families. So during COVID, churches have donated direct, not nothing going into our bank account at all.
Mm-hmm.
Check.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the middleman.
Yeah.
Over $100,000
Awesome.
to families that were going to get evicted, that needed to pay bills, that needed food, that needed clothes. You know,
Yeah.
because of COVID, some of these families were um, living in their cars. Some of them were, and you think about this. Everyone that I work with has children under the age of 18, and they're all
Yeah.
vetted. We don't just get random people. We know
Right.
because we work with schools and we work with, you know, um, community agencies. We know
Yeah.
the situation of the people, and some were living in COVID. I think hotels were open for COVID, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
them were lacking resources. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the churches really came through, and they're not putting it on a they're not putting it on a hill or shouting it out. They just said, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm not asking. I'm not. Don't give them our business. You don't have to give them our business card. You don't have to share a message with them. You don't have to give them anything. Just help them."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was powerful, and people were like, "Thank you." I'm like, "Don't thank me. There's a lot of generous people. Thank me maybe for getting the check or whatever. I don't know, but I'm just but not like it was a lot of generous people that have faith that just wanted that knew that our world was in crisis
Yeah.
and they had
Yeah.
means to help people. And I I've delivered thousands, probably. I was going to say hundreds, but it's probably like thousands of care packages to people, like with groceries and gift cards and
Yeah.
help with all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, I have a limited budget. I can't do that on my own. And it
Yeah.
was just the generosity of people here in the Silicon Valley in San Jose that really really stepped up, and a lot of it, is the church, and they helped out a lot of people during
Yeah.
that time.
Awesome. That's cool. You're like San Jose's Mother Teresa,
Yeah, yeah,
but with a better voice.
yeah.
Well, cool. Hey, I just want to, thank you for what you're doing, and it's just an incredible, incredible, encouraging story to see how your life has changed and how, just how incredible that experience that you had that was bad is now being used for so much good and empathy for our city, and we're blessed to have you to be in our city.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah.
I'm just kind of getting
And
a little emotional right now because I used to destroy, but now I get to build into lives, and I'm glad, Daniel, I'm getting to talk with you about this, and I
yeah,
remember why I'm doing what I do. Part of it is my faith and just my love for my city. I love the city,
yeah,
and
yeah, me
I
too.
I look back at what I used to do, and it's very destructive, and I'm so thankful that God changed my life, that I'm able to just build now and invest in the now generation. These kids that I'm working with, and working with wonderful people from different agencies and government agencies, and all
Yeah,
around, just working together. Um, it's just an honor to be able
yeah,
to do this.
awesome. Well, I appreciate, yeah, as you know, the post-traumatic quest book says, from pain to purpose, from purpose to peace. So
Yeah.
incredible. Thank you very much. Thank you for the book. And we will put in the show notes and all those kind of things on how they can get it. But how can people help City Peace Project?
Well, I mean, there's many ways, right? There's opportunities to volunteer. There's donations. Right now, we're not really, because of COVID, with volunteers, but
Yeah.
more with, there's financial support, or people can donate canned goods, non-perishables, to us.
Okay. Yeah.
They can also, our website is thecitypeaceproject.org.
Mm-hmm.
They can send an email through there. They also, if you want to just see what we're doing,
Yeah.
a City Peace Project on Instagram,
Yeah.
or if you want to learn more about the book, Post Traumatic Quest on Instagram, or Pastor Danny underscore Sanchez. They can look at my page also, and I'm also on Facebook. A lot of people reach out through those platforms, those social media platforms, uh,
Yeah.
and the book's available on Amazon,
Yeah.
and so they can go to Amazon and pick up the book, Post Traumatic Quest.
Yeah. That's cool. Awesome. And you're on Spotify and you're
I'm on
the
Spotify.
music.
Yeah, I get the music out. Yeah, yeah,
Are you on TikTok and Snapchat and
yeah. I'm not
and
on those
everything?
platforms, but yeah. So yeah, the music's on iTunes, and Spotify. So is the book. Again, the music was something where it's giving hope beyond. It's we're from. It was written in the '90s, so it's
Yeah.
kind of got that grunge melodic
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
vibe. Uh,
Metallica slash. Yeah.
yeah. So it's it's like a throwback to the '90s grunge. So if you're into that throwback right now,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd appreciate if y'all check it out and share it, and just know the heart behind it is to give people hope. Everything that I'm doing, that I've been given, I freely receive, and I
Yeah.
really want to give,
Yeah.
and I want to help.
Amen. Amen. That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Danny. Thank you for your time. And like I said, thank you for the work. And I hope because of this podcast, there's people who contribute, purchase, and help out. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I bet, like,
Thanks.
I just want to say one thing really quick.
Sure.
And Jose, I love you. I love all of you. Daniel, I appreciate you. I love you, and I thank you for letting me be a part of this podcast. And yeah, I just
Thank you,
want to
man.
share that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right,
Thanks. Bye.
bye.
To find out more about Danny and the projects that he does in the community, go to his website, The City Peace Project. And to find out more about the book, go to the website, Post Traumatic Quest. Also follow him on Instagram at The City Peace Project and at Pastor Danny underscore Sanchez.
The river is my soul. Now that I've been set free, I'm no longer all alone.
Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creatives. The music for this episode is by Danny Sanchez and can be found on his Spotify Post Traumatic Quest.